I've been with my boyfriend for 11 years, since I was 15. His mother has hated me since the first day she met me. She hated me due to my ethnicity, Kosovan Albanian. She hated me due to my career. I work as a model, and she decided that makes me an empty-headed, vain, shallow person. Then when I told her I still planned to go to university alongside my career, she said I was doing it to impress my boyfriend. I've since left uni with a distinction, and her new reason to hate me is I try too hard. She has also insisted I've cheated on him throughout our entire relationship, which is a ridiculous claim. I've never even kissed another man in my whole life. I have zero desire to cheat and never will. Late last year, she attempted to void the insurance on my boyfriend's motorbikes. She tried to do this under my name, so hypothetically, when he was arrested for riding with no insurance and called his insurance company, I'd get the blame. After this happened, my boyfriend and I agreed to cut her out. However, it hasn't stuck. She left my boyfriend alone and respected his wishes for NC, but she's continued to contact and harass me. This leads to the last few weeks. My boyfriend works as a motorcycle test rider, and he got in an awful motorbike crash while working. As such, I now need to care for him. I'm okay with that, and I'm focusing on seeing it as an opportunity for us to get closer. It's been nice, honestly. However, his mother has been awful to me. She's called me litany of terms. From things as tame as stupid to things as awful as a nasty Serbian half-breed. I'm not Serbian, and she's well aware that calling a Kosovan a Serb is offensive. I tried to block her, so she started making new iMessage accounts and began to continuously harass me via those accounts. Then came Friday night. The police turned up at our door. I was pretty confused and was quickly told they were there to do a welfare check as they'd received multiple claims of horrific abuse I was apparently putting my poor boyfriend under. Obviously, they quickly discovered he was fine, albeit grumpy, and they left. I know for a fact it was his mother. Some of the details the police mentioned made that obvious. I'm now at a point where I've realized I literally cannot do this. I'm going to press charges against her for the insurance and harassment. It's a crime in the UK. And I'm likely going to sue her for damages. For the sake of my mental health, I need to do this. I don't want to be a victim, and she needs to be forced to stop. I have mentioned my intentions to her if she doesn't back off, and she's pretty much mocking me and saying I won't. I absolutely will. I just feel like this morally may make me an awful person. She sucks, I know this. However, she's old and miserable enough as is, and I feel like doing this may ruin whatever small amount of life she has left. It feels like it may be too far. I really don't know though, and I genuinely cannot be objective here. I am 18 years old male, I'm a high school senior, and proposal season is currently in full swing. I was in my AP Chem class when suddenly an entourage of people entered my classroom with a disabled girl. She has cerebral palsy, that I know. I first saw the posters and the bouquet of flowers she was holding and thought, "Aww, that's sweet of her." Then they revealed the posters, and I read my name and was completely taken aback. I literally almost had a anxiety attack. I didn't know what to say at all, and the entire class was cheering, and people even started filming. I was straight up frozen for a minute, and I could feel myself burning up with embarrassment. Of course I wanted to say no, but since it was so public and everyone was waiting for me to say yes, I did and hugged her. Everyone clapped, including the teacher, and I was mortified. One of my buddies asked me if I was okay. Afterwards, since apparently I looked like I was gonna burst into tears, and I told him I literally did not expect that at all, and I didn't want to say yes. He suggested that I go find her after school or something and explain that to her, and I agreed. Now, this girl is really nice. We had a class together last year and sat next to each other for a majority of it and talked quite a lot. I would say we were friends then, but we haven't spoken more than 2 times this school year, so we've definitely drifted apart. That's why I was completely shocked when she sprung the prom asking on me. Usually, people have their friends make sure that the other is at least aware before doing the asking to prevent situations like this. I was contemplating if I should just bite the bullet and go with her, but decided I just couldn't because it is my senior year prom and I was already starting to plan my asking. There's this girl that I've liked for a couple of months now, and I recently heard from my friends that she likes me back, so I was gonna ask her. So I ended up going to the special ed classroom after school where I found her and asked if I could speak to her outside. I told her everything and how I really appreciated the gesture. But I was already planning on asking my crush to prom and she was crushed. She started crying really loudly and asked me why I couldn't have just said no, and I said that I didn't want to embarrass the two of us in front of all those people. At this point, one of her aides came out to check on us since she could hear the crying, and the girl told her aide what happened and she straight up glared at me and said, "That's not okay." Now I feel like absolute shit. About 5 years ago, my now estranged daughter, Edie, cheated on her boyfriend, Brad, and got together with a guy, Ken. He quickly started isolating her from family and my husband I from her kids. Brad had moved back to his home state devastated after the breakup. I discussed red flags her. I let her know we are here for her and concerned. Her and Ken suddenly took off and moved to another state. For 5 months, my husband I worried about her and the kids as we had n//c at all with them. One day CPS showed up at our door with the oldest child. He was obviously injured from abuse that was reported by the school. We had no idea they had moved back to the area. We agreed to take them in. The next 20 months were traumatic, complicated, emotional, and difficult for everyone. Through it we re-established a relationship with the older child's dad, Dan. Daughter failed to comply with her plan and remained with Ken. Dan worked hard to get custody of his child and he gave Edie scheduled weekly phone calls. She called oldest child 2x nothing since. We agreed to permanent custody of youngest. In the process, I put aside the hurt Edie caused and agreed to scheduled weekly phone calls and supervised visits in person when schedules allowed. Legally, any or no contact is at my sole discretion. Ken was not allowed to interfere / attend. Edie quit calling / scheduling visits after 3 months. I reset the call schedule to 1 XEA mon. No calls. 6 months later she calls and wanted me to drop everything for a visit the following day. I couldn't because I had to go back to work. Calls stopped again. She left Ken, has a new BF. I know nothing else about her life / whereabouts. She started calling again about a year ago and I let her know that if she was consistent with her monthly scheduled calls, we would move towards weekly calls again. She called 2 months in a row, skipped a couple months, then called 2 more months in a row. Last one happened to be night before child's birthday. She asked him what he wanted for his birthday. He said a call from her. The next day, as he blew out candles, he said, "My mom is gonna call now." He had the biggest smile on his face. Call never came. He refused my offer to call her. We survived an emotional meltdown. Next month, no call, just a text after with a lame timing excuse as to why and sorry about the birthday call, she didn't feel well. Following month, I get a text that Edie feels ill again, won't be calling. I am beyond frustrated at this point. I have looked past her refusal to rebuild a relationship with us, but when it comes to the kids my heart aches for them. Hey race where I might be the I responded, "Parents do not get sick time. We all had COVID recently, including me, and I still took care of the children. If you do not have any time for him once a month, I don't want my time wasted with your excuses." Of course, calls stopped again. My husband Nick was married to his first wife Vanessa for 5 years and they had 2 amazing kids, Luke and Lila. Sadly, Vanessa died in an accident 11 years ago when the kids were very young. I started dating Nick 8 years ago and we started off very slowly for obvious reasons. Nick has always been a little more distant than anyone I'd ever been with. But he and the kids lost Vanessa so young that I understood it. After 3 years of dating, Nick asked me to marry him and I moved in. I've always had a really great relationship with Luke and Lila and they were happy for me to marry their dad. I had wanted an actual wedding, nothing big. But Nick really didn't want one, so we got married at the courthouse with just Luke and Lila present. We had a really fast engagement, but it worked for all of us. I have loved being Luke and Lila's stepmom and officially adopted them after I found out I was pregnant with our son, Casey. The kids have been so great with Casey and help out so much. Nick was wonderful during the pregnancy and had always been a really loving dad and husband. But Nick has been pulling away a lot the last few months. He's been even more distant than usual and working late nights and going away with friends almost every weekend. I've tried talking to him, but he's been impatient with both me and the kids. I found out I was pregnant in June and am now 21 weeks pregnant with a girl. The kids are excited to have a little sister, but Nick just seems so indifferent to everything and everyone. He's been missing soccer games, Lila's birthday, doctor's appointments, etc. Casey is too young to notice, but Luke and Lila are so hurt by their dad's absence. These kids are so good and they lost their mom so young, and I'm infuriated that Nick is ignoring the kids like this. Last week, I finally sat Nick down and told him that he needs to stop disappearing and be more present in our lives. We're going to have another child soon, and before we know it, Luke and Lila will be grown up and going to college. After an hour of arguing, he screamed at me that he wished Vanessa was still alive and that I had switched places with her and died instead. He also threw in some awful comments that I need to stop pretending I'm Luke and Lila's real mom and that I'm only half the mom Vanessa was. The final straw was him saying that he never even wanted any kids with me, but did it so I'd keep busy and leave him alone. I'm so beyond hurt right now. I know I'm just his second choice, but I've always tried to honor Vanessa and tell Luke and Lila how lucky they were to have her as their mom. I love all of our kids more than anything, and I'm just so heartbroken. Nick barely pays attention to Casey now and doesn't even acknowledge the pregnancy. He somewhat apologized this weekend and took all 3 kids to lunch, but he won't even look me in the eye. He seems like he wants to talk, but he doesn't say anything, and I'm too upset to even be near him. I'm not sure where to go from here. Honestly, I can't even be around Nick right now, and if there weren't any kids involved, I'd leave and never look back. I'm not sure if he's cheating or the thought of a 4th child is stressing him out. But I'm devastated and not sure how or why I should save this marriage, besides doing it for the kids.